Hello, hello, hello. Howdy, folks. Brian O'HalloRANT here. You're watching the O'HalloRANT. Tonight, I'm really excited. Tonight, got a great guest who comes from the Jersey area, Jersey boy. Went to LA with his writing partner, girlfriend at the time, and made it huge. Was working on huge television shows while still being they're both being incredibly prolific stage play writers. And so I'm really excited to talk to our guest, Billy Van Zandt. He'll be our guest tonight. He'll be also talking about his new book, Jane, Get in the Car, Jane, Adventures in the TV Wasteland. I was reading it the past couple of days. Oh my God, hilarious. What great stories about being a writer and also being part of these sitcoms as well. I mean, he's been part of some incredible shows. The Wayan Brothers, Martin, Suddenly Susan, the Hughleys, Newhart, Yes Dear, and tons more. So we're going to get into that and talking about that. I got to tell you, man, another crazy week. I was out yesterday and decided to take advantage of the fact that it was overcast and stuff and mow my lawn and my neighbor's lawn. Now, what I do is I use the neighbor's lawnmower. They're an older couple. And I would mow my lawn and their lawn. And their mower is on the side of the house. They have an access point to get to their crawl space where they have storage and stuff. And I pulled out this lawnmower. And I start with their side of their house, and I was going to do their whole back lawn first. And at the side of their house, all of a sudden I'm getting swarmed. I look down and there's a wasp on my arm. I'm like, holy crap. And I can feel it biting me. So I'm like, I swat it off. And then I'm feeling like, oh my God, there's something on my back. Next thing you know, I'm swarmed by wasps. And not white Anglo-Saxon people. I'm talking the insect. And it was crazy. So I ran across to my house, running in the house, threw off my hat. And I was like, taking off my, like, oh my God. Diane's like, what's going on? I'm like, I think I had bee wasps or something on me. And she's like, oh my God, they're on your pants. And so I had to take that off. And it was crazy. So I got stung 6 times and they like took over like the window area of my bedroom, which we then opened up the windows and let them out. But that was my day yesterday. I took Benadryl. I'm okay. I'm good. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern. But that's what happened. So literally the lawnmower is sitting on the side of the house of the neighbor's house where I left it, because once you let it go, it just shuts off. They've ordered a exterminator to come by and inspect where this came from. Where I don't know where it came from. Was it in the crawl space? Was it in the trees right near where I was mowing? I don't know. Anyway, that's how my week was ending, was with that. So I'm really, really happy to be here tonight. And thankfully, I don't have any type of allergies to the wasp venom. So we're all safe with that. So without any further ado, I'd like to bring on my guest. He's a prolific writer, especially of plays and TV scripts, screenplays, and his new book, Get in the Car, Jane, his Adventures in the TV Wasteland. I'd like to welcome aboard Mr. Billy Van Zandt. How's it going?
Hey, Brian. Thank you for having me, and I'm glad you're standing here at all after six wasps. 6.
I know. I could handle 6 of the other types of wasps where they're just like, so where did you go to school? Really? Have you invested in the stock market? Oh. That's my very bad impersonation of a wasp.
That's very good. Yeah.
Not bad for an Irish Catholic kid. So where are we getting you? What part of the world are we getting you from, Billy?
I am in California, in Studio City. And this is the first, I was just saying this is the first time in my lifetime I am not spending the summer at the Jersey Shore. And I don't like it. I should be back there.
Yeah.
I'm not getting on any planes right now. Thank you.
Yeah. That's the thing, man. There's multiple different levels of getting around in the sense of like, well, I'll just drive. No one's going to drive cross country, and then
No.
even then it's like there you have more chances of getting it in these states that are now in between the California and New
Yeah.
York City area. So it's really tough for doing it. So you're in the California, you're in Studio City, right in the hub of TV land.
I am. I'm pretty much a couple of blocks from where I did the Newhart show, my first TV job. So
Nice.
yeah, yeah.
I read in this is a great collection of books. By the way, this is your first actual like book.
It
You've written
is.
tons
It
of
is.
stage plays, but this is where your own thoughts of your own life being put
Yeah.
in. And I love the opening when you first arrive in LA for the very first time. You get in your rental car and you drive straight to Lucille Ball's house. And
Yes. Yeah, she
please
was.
tell us that story.
Lucy is the reason I went into show business in the first place. That was the kind of comedy I wanted to do. Those are the kind of scripts I wanted to write. And I've always had a thing about Lucy, learning her timing and all this sort of thing. So when I first got out here, right from the airport, straight to her house, Jane was my girlfriend at the time. She says, "What are you doing?" Because I started to get out of the car. And I said, "Well, I got to go meet her." She said, "Are you crazy?" She hid under the dashboard, and I walked up the brick walkway, and I knocked on the door, and a little houseboy answered the door, and I said, "Billy Van Zandt's here to see Lucille Ball," and he slammed the door in my face, said she's not home, and I got back in the car, and we drove away. 10 years later, I was a guest of Lucille Ball's in her house, and I asked if she had ever met Charlie Chaplin, because I said, "You can see it in your work that you've obviously studied him. I've never seen any pictures of the two of you together." And she said, "No, but I'll tell you a funny story. I found out where he lived. We were in Switzerland, my husband and I. So I drove over to his house, but Gary wouldn't get out of the car. He just hid under the dashboard. And I got out and I walked up and I knocked on the door and said, 'Lucille Ball's here to see Charlie Chaplin.' And this big fat housekeeper said, 'Oh, he's not home,' and slammed the door in my face." And I didn't tell her my part of the story because right before we had gotten to that subject, we were talking about how the house was right on the street and pretty accessible. And I said, "What do you do in terms of fans and stuff?" She said, "Well, with a push of a button, like bars will come down over the windows." So I thought, well, if I tell her this story, they're going to kick me out of the house. They're going to think I'm a fanatic fan, which I am. So, but she and I connected pretty well when I finally got to meet her.
Yeah, you did. You had a friend who a couple of years later was being asked to be a part of the second Lucille Ball show.
Fourth. It was her fourth. First it was I Love Lucy, The Lucy Show, Here's Lucy, and then this one was Life with Lucy. This is supposed to be her big, her big comeback sort of thing. And my friend Ann Dusenberry was in Jaws 2 with me. We were both in that movie together, and she was cast as Lucy's daughter. So I got a phone call from Ann when she got the job, and she said, I called my mother, and then I'm calling you because I know what this means to you. So I jumped on a plane and went out there to watch a rehearsal and finally meet Lucille Ball. And I got there and I found out that it was a closed set. No one was allowed on the soundstage at all. So I, in true Lucy fashion, I snuck up into the back of the bleachers anyway. And I looked down and they're about to do the table read of the script of the week. And I see Lucille Ball enter the soundstage, and she sits down, and I know I'm going to get my friend Ann in trouble. So I'm really trying to be quiet and hide. And I see Ann whisper something to Lucy, and Lucy whispers something to Ann. And all of a sudden, Lucy gets up and she walks up to the edge of the bleachers, and she looks up right at me. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get Ann fired. And she just looked up at me and she went, "Hello, Billy, I heard you were coming." And for the rest of the week, it was a closed set with one exception, me. I got to sit in the audience and watch her rehearse, and it was fantastic. Fantastic.
So what inspired you to become an actor?
I always wanted to, I was always making people laugh, and I was always entertaining my cousins with either puppet shows or little skits or something. The neighborhood kids, we do variety shows for muscular dystrophy, telethon, all that stuff. And when I wasn't really until I was in maybe seventh grade, I started actually going out for the plays. And worst day of my father's life was seventh grade when he says, "So you trying out for the baseball team?" And I said, no, I'm going to be in the chorus of Oliver. Didn't go over too good. But so that started me. And I will say my teachers at the Middletown, New Jersey, the Middletown school system had the greatest arts program, music, theater. It was so good. And I mean, I've worked with a ton of people since then. The training we got in that high school was fantastic. Um, so that's sort of the teachers, the drama teachers, Lois Martineau, Lane Sutton, Lucille Brothers, they sort of encouraged me. They showed me that I had, this is what I should do. And they let me write the play that we put on and all this other thing. And thanks to them, I started off, and then I started doing community theater in the area. Community theater got me an agent and a manager, and that got me my first movie audition, which was Jaws 2. And Jaws 2 changed my life.
Nice. For those who don't remember him in Jaws 2, he was wearing this like almost like a Greek sailor's hat. It was like a kind of
gray.
hat.
It was funny. There were so many of us in the film, so many teenagers in that film, that Keith Gordon and I, we immediately looked around at the first day and we saw there's too many people. There's just too many people. We got to do something to identify ourselves. So we went running to the prop department. He grabbed glasses before I could. So I grabbed a gray hat. He had a black hat or something. So that was, and I had a life jacket. So I was like, okay, if anybody asks, I'm the guy with the life jacket and the gray hat. And that movie, I was actually in both versions of the movie. The original one was a dark R-rated movie directed by John Hancock, who did Bang the Drum Slowly. And he and his wife, she wrote the script and he was directing it. And after 4 months of rehearsal, they fired him, they fired her, and they sent all the kids home. All us kids, we were there for 4 weeks learning to sail and rehearse, and we shot a couple scenes. I was originally Robert Shaw's son in Jaws 2.
Oh, wow.
And I had a fantastic death scene where I start to swim towards shore, and suddenly you see me propelled towards the Roy Scheider, and he reaches down, he pulls me up, and only the top half of me came out of the water.
What a way to go.
It was fantastic. But then I get a call after we've all been sent home, come down to Florida, and I go down to Florida and I meet a new director. Carl Gottlieb, who wrote the original Jaws, is now on the set writing this movie as we film it. And 3/4 of the cast are all new. They all had to go out to Hollywood and re-audition. For some reason, I didn't do that. And I still don't know why that happened. So the second movie was definitely PG. Everything was lighter and the colors were brighter. And my death became a thing where they were afraid it was going to give the movie an R rating. So they kept toning it down. And so they made rubber casts of my legs, and the shark was going to chew the bottom half of my legs off. And then they decided, no, that's too bloody too. So they had me on top of a pontoon, and I was kicking towards shore. And then the shark came and crashed down on top of me, and we all disappeared under the water. So I saw the stuntman do it, and I said, no, it doesn't look like me. I want to do it myself. And David Brown, the producer, said, okay, but it's going to be the last thing we shoot in Florida. I said, why does it have to be the last thing you shoot? He said, in case we kill you. So they put ropes around my waist, put me on top of the pontoon, and there were scuba divers under the water ready to yank on the ropes. And the shark on his little roller coaster track came across and crashed down on top of me. And right before it did, they yanked me underwater, and the shark, tons of weight, and me and the scuba divers all disappeared under the water at the same time. I didn't know until I went to see the movie in the theater if I lived or died, because they had me shoot a little thing where I crawl up on the rocks and thank you. And unfortunately I lived. But if there are a lot of fans of that movie, if you watch that movie, in the very last shot, and everybody always asks, why is Donna Wilkes, who plays Jackie, why is she screaming like a lunatic at the end of that movie? It's because she just saw me get killed, but that's not in the movie anymore. So in the last shot, you see everybody on Cable Junction on the island watching the shark go on fire, all this sort of thing. I'm not there. So somehow I must have swum around to the back of the island because I'm not in the shot. But I'm still friends with all those guys. A couple of years ago,
it's always fun. It's always fun seeing the people who bring up the continuity errors. I'm like, oh, lights are off, lights are on. See
Yeah. Oh
that?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm one of those type of guys too, and it's always terrible watching a film with me because I'm like, they totally have two sets going on. See the glasses.
Oh,
The
yeah.
cigarette was not lit before. Now it's lit. That's not right. So how did you get from then you're pursuing your dreams of acting in LA to going into the writing aspect of it?
Well, the auditions were few and far between. I wasn't a particular type of any kind.
Hmm.
If I'm half Italian, but if I went up against a real Italian guy, I looked like a wasp. If I went up against a wasp, I looked ethnic. So there was really no roles for me. I was lucky enough to do Taps with at the time it was starring George C. Scott and Timothy Hutton, but now it's known as a movie that starred Tom Cruise and Sean Penn and Giancarlo Esposito and Evan Handler from Sex and the City.
Right.
And but those were few and far between. So I started writing with Jane, writing plays to give myself something to act in. And the plays, to condense this all, the plays got successful. They brought me out to write for the Bob Newhart show. That was my first introduction to TV, and it was because of the plays. And I contemplated whether I should take this job or not because it's going to interfere with my acting career. So I called my agent up. I said, Maggie, I don't know if I should take this because, it could put my acting career on hold for a whole year. And 2 weeks later, when she hadn't called me back, I figured there's not much of an acting career to worry about. So I took the job, and I've been doing that for, 100 years ever since.
Now you partnered up with Jane Milmar. She was your on again, off again, on again, off again, on again, as you say in the book.
Yeah.
Girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
She passed away unfortunately earlier this year
Yeah.
from cancer, and a huge loss in the community. But in partnership with her, you and her wrote all these plays, tons and tons of these plays, and
25. Yeah.
25 of them, and then worked on numerous TV shows. And I gotta ask, you worked on the Newhart show. How was it working with Bob Newhart?
It spoiled me for everything that came afterwards. I loved this man. He was the most giving performer. He we refused to use a laugh track. He said the audience at home knows if it's a good joke or not. I don't need you to put a thing in there. And he also, I worked from 10 in the morning to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's it. That's unheard of for a TV show. Everything since then, you work till 3 o'clock in the morning. You're working on Saturday. This was 10 to 5 days a week, the entire season. He also had a standing dinner reservation at 9 o'clock at night on Friday. So we started shooting it at 7 o'clock, and he had to make his dinner reservation at 9. So it was fantastic. But what I loved about him was how giving he was. And he would see, we'd read a script and he'd say, be funnier if Peter said this instead of me. Or why don't you give Julia more to do here? Because it'd be better. And I pulled him aside at one point and I said, why? You're very giving. Why are you? And he said, the better everybody is, the better the show is, the better it is for me. I don't, so he's not one of those egocentric, everything's got to be about me guys.
Yeah, he's very much. I noticed his career was very much the subtle innuendo, the tongue-in-cheek kind of twist, wordplay about him. That he didn't need the big overt type of laugh.
No.
That's why I always enjoyed Newhart as well.
Yeah, yeah, and it spoiled me. The other thing for me, it was my very first time working on a sitcom. And it was the very first time I was a kid in a candy store with all these people I had grown up watching on TV. I was the kind of kid, you'd get the TV guide and you'd circle all the things you're going to watch for the week. And, but they were all the guest stars on the show. It was great. It was just great.
So then you went on from Newhart to which show next? Anything
But Love with Richard Lewis and Jamie Lee Curtis. And this was unheard of. And I blew this. I just blew this. Jane and I were asked to not only be on the writing staff, but we had little acting roles every week in the show as regulars. That was something that was unheard of back then. You were either a writer or you were an actor. It's not like once The Office hit, everybody who writes is also on the show and stuff. This was really unheard of. And And I quit that. I quit the show because people were messing with our scripts too much, and it pissed me off. So the naivete and ego of a young person blew that one for me.
Now,
Uh,
since you're such a fantastic person at writing, and just you could play any man and write for any man, you were asked to be a part of an upcoming show called Martin, the Martin
yeah.
Lawrence. So, how did a shall we say, a white guy from the Jersey Shore, half Italian, half Irish, get to write for Martin Lawrence and the gang?
We got a phone call from John Bowman, who had created the show with Martin, and said, "Would you like to do a show for Martin Lawrence?" Now, out here, there was an art gallery in all the malls, the Martin Lawrence Art Gallery. So I thought he was asking us to do a show about an art gallery. I didn't know who this guy was, and they sent us the tape of him doing his stand-up act on the Def Jam, and man, was he funny. So we said yes right away. But I said, look, there are a couple things that you know, I'm not gonna pretend I'm black when I write these scripts. I'm not, that would be patronizing and stupid. I'm not gonna do it. So
Right.
we have a white or something. They'll change it. They'll fix it, whatever. And that's how we did the show. And so the first season of Martin, Jane and we created Garrett Morris's character of Stan, and Martin's characters of Otis, the security guard, and Roscoe, the little kid with the snot nose,
Right.
and there were about 4 or 5 more. But we did all that. And but mostly what we did on that show was we wrote males female stories,
Right. The
and
relationship.
just the relationship, yeah. And I will say he was tough to work for. He was very tough to work for, but it took me a while to realize this. When you're working with a stand-up comedian, they have been their own writer, they've been their own producer, and they've been their own actor on the road for probably 10 years before they show up to do a
Right.
sitcom. And so they're walking into a situation where suddenly a new person who they've never met before says, I know you've been doing this for 10 years, but now it's up to me.
Right.
You know, it's
Let me tell you what's funny.
yeah, I'll tell you what's funny. And it makes for a little tension.
Yeah.
But eventually, you know, and he was funny. I will say, and I mean this as a compliment, he reminded me of Jerry Lewis, because he would take a bit that was supposed to last, I don't know, 10 seconds, and he'd do it for 4 minutes long. And it was the audacity of how long he was doing this physical bit was so funny. You laughed at the initial part, then you laughed at how long he was going for, and then you'd laugh at. I think the first season he was brilliantly funny, brilliant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For those who are just joining us, we're talking to Billy Van Zandt, writer, actor, producer, showrunner, in his new book, Get in the Car, Jane, Adventures in a TV Wasteland. And that story that you just told, plus many more, are in this book. Then we're asked to be a part of the Wayan Brothers show.
Yeah, yeah,
which was here it is again. You're walking into a situation where they're like, okay, who's this guy?
yeah.
You pulled it off.
It was so strange because we got a phone call. We were in development under Warner Brothers, where they pay you a lot of money to sit in a room and think of shows to go pitch to the networks. So we got a phone call from the development guy saying the Wayan Brothers show is in trouble. This was the first show that was going to be on the WB network. So the start date was in, cement. That had to open, whatever it was, January 15th, something like that. And they said, it's not working out. Can you go over and take over the show? And we said, take over the show? This is 6 weeks away. And they said, yeah, but don't worry. There's a stack of scripts and big staff of really talented people. And just you go over and introduce yourself, and you take over the show, and you can, you write fast, you'll be fine. So we go over there, and we've never met Marlon and Sean Wayans before. And we walk into a room, and they're sitting at a table with their manager and this other guy. So we walk in, and they say, can we help you? And I said, hi, this is Jane Milmore. I'm Billy Van Zandt. We're the new showrunners. And the other guy says, the new what? And we realize he's the old showrunner, and I just fired him. He had no clue. So he goes to call his agent to find out he's been fired. And we meet the stars of our show, and we have 6 weeks to cast the show, create the show, because there were no scripts waiting for us over there. There was nothing there. We had to create the show, we had to cast it, and then we had to shoot it and edit it and know what we were doing and get it on the air in 6 weeks. It was insane.
Now,
And
this wasn't
so,
the only time that a network had duped you. Weirdly enough,
no, it's the same.
You were asked to come in for a Brooke Shields kind of a show,
Yeah.
and this is that NBC Suddenly Susan, which I was a huge fan of, by the way. I really
Okay.
enjoyed it. But tell them how you were invited to be a part of to maybe be a part of the team of Suddenly Susan.
It was the same guy that conned us into the Wayans Brothers. And having said that, I think Marlon's really anyway. There was fun, but anyway, we get a phone call saying Suddenly Susan. There was a drama script called Suddenly Susan, written by a very talented guy named Clyde Phillips, and Brooke Shields wanted to do that show, and NBC wanted her on the air. So they said, we'll put you on the air, but we want you to take that script and we want it to be a comedy instead, so it'll fit right after Seinfeld. Well, the creator,
that was the powerhouse of TV, and you were asked to be right in the middle of it all. That's a huge
yeah.
Thing.
So we met with we said we don't have time to do this. We're going back east to do a play, and they said, no, just give notes on the script. And I said, okay. So we go to a meeting thinking that we're giving notes on a script, and we walk into a restaurant, and there are 40, 50 people with pads and pens, and the president of the network sitting there. And he says, ladies and gentlemen, we would just like to thank Billy Van Zandt and Jane Milmore for taking over Suddenly Susan. Well, we didn't know what that even meant, because there was no show. And we had 2 weeks from that meeting to create a show, because what he had written in his script didn't work at all. It took place
now, normally, tell the audience, how long does it really take to develop a show, get casting scripts, sets built before you even shoot frame one?
Months. Normally you work on whatever the idea is on your own for a month or two. Then you go pitch it to the network. They say yes. You have 4 or 5 weeks to go write a first draft. Then they give you notes on that. You have 2 or 3 more weeks to write the second draft. Then they decide whether they're going to film it or not. At that point, you have about a month, 6 weeks maybe to cast it. Then you shoot it. Then you have about 4 weeks to edit it. And all in all, it should be about a 6-month period to put on it, to do a pilot. So we had 2 weeks, and there was no show. So, and they also had, the sets were already built for the other show that they had just thrown out, but they were built wrong. It was built for a 1-camera show, which means like a film, you can go deep into the set and shoot things. A sitcom, everything is, the cameras are all out front, and you'll notice on all the sitcom sets, all the actors are never in the room in the back. They're always lined up in front of the couch. So we had to convert everything, and we didn't have a cast. So they told us who had an audition for the other show the week before, and I was just like, Elizabeth Ashley, we'll use her. Nancy Marchand can play the grandmother, and Warren Littlefield, the president, said, "Oh, you'll need Maggie Wheeler, who was just on Friends. She'll play the best friend." I was like, okay. So we went back to our office on a Friday, and we had to create a show for actors. We didn't even know what roles they would be playing, and we had to turn it in on Monday, so that the costumers and the prop people and everybody could do their jobs. So we went to the table on it was on Wednesday, I think. We read the script for the first time. Thank God it all worked. And 2 weeks later, or 2 weeks from that meeting, we turned in a finished script, a finished edited show, and it was put on the fall schedule after Seinfeld. And then they replaced Jane and me.
Unbelievable.
You're welcome.
So then did you work with Kathy Griffin on that show as well?
No, she replaced Maggie Wheeler. When they replaced Jane and me with Gary Donzig and Steve Peterman, Murphy Brown writers, very good writers.
Right.
Why them, not us? I don't know. But they fired our entire cast too, And if they
Wow.
had not fired our entire cast, Nancy Marchand would not have done The Sopranos.
Oh,
So
see,
that it all
door
works out.
closed, windows open.
All works out. So yeah. So that was, but to this day, no one's fired me from that show. I just, they just ignore you till you go away, I guess.
Then you got to work on a dream project. A couple of months, 10 months or so after Lucille Ball had passed, one of the producers over at CBS or something like that had found the very first pilot episode of the I Love Lucy, or what would have been
Yeah,
the I
yeah.
Love
This was so bizarre. We were under development to a company called Grant Tribune. Bud Grant he had been the president of CBS. Now he was an independent producer, and he went to I can't remember why. It was either somebody's birthday or something, but he went to the home of a dance. This is sound complicated, but it's not. He went with his girlfriend to her old dance teacher's house for dinner.
Okay.
After dinner, this old lady, started showing home movies. And one of the movies she happened to show was the pilot to I Love Lucy that no one had seen in 40 years. They thought it was lost. Turns out this woman was the wife of a clown named Pepito the Clown, who was a friend of Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball and put together their vaudeville act and was in the pilot, and they gave it to him as a gift. But this woman didn't know what she had. She stored it under her bed with, home movies of the kids blowing out candles and stuff. So Bud came to us and he said, "Do you want to do a, I Love Lucy special?" And Jane said, "Well, I don't get a choice, and you don't even have to ask him. Of course we're going to do this." So we went to CBS and we told them what we had, and they said, "Well, we own the footage." And we said, "Well, yeah, we know, but you can't have it. We want to do a special." And they said, "No, we're going to cut it down to 22 minutes. I said, "No, you're not." I said,
Because the studio in their own library lost it. It's not even in
gone.
the physical reel is gone, and no one had the wherewithal to digitize it and scan it and get it digitally. So you guys literally had the last remaining footage.
Yeah. And so we insisted on they give us a full hour. And I said, I'll get somebody to tell the story. I'll get Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz in their own words from past footage to tell the story of how they put the show together. And then you can show the footage. And they said, "Okay, but you have to have this, done in 2 weeks. It sweeps. And if you can't do it in 2 weeks, we're going to chop it to 22 minutes. And I thought, well, you don't know who you're dealing with. I know everything Lucy and Desi ever did.
Right.
So in 2 weeks, I worked very fast. If you haven't caught on to that by now, we got Barbara Walters to give us footage from Good Morning America, and at the time, ABC didn't give CBS footage for anything, but we got that, and I put together the full hour, and we needed a host. And I wanted to use Lucy Arnaz, but her mother had just died, and it felt weird. So we started negotiating with Carol Burnett. And in the meantime, Lucy had read our script because now, having been in charge of her parents' estates, she had to approve of stuff to give us the footage.
Right.
And when she read the script, she called us up and she said, "I want to host this." She said, "You pay more. This is the first time someone's paid attention to my father. They always refer to him as my mother's straight man, and that's about it." And he reinvented the sitcom as we all know it today. And I was paying tribute to him. So she came on board and she hosted it. And I didn't realize it at the time, but the day she came in to do some narration, it was the 1 year anniversary of her mother's death. And I felt very weird about the whole thing, but it was a great special. We were the highest rated show of the year.
You were, and you got nominated for Best Informational Special Emmy. So you got an Emmy nomination on that.
An Emmy nomination, yeah, it was great.
So, that must have been nice.
It was great, except I figured we would have won.
Yeah.
At least I thought I was not going to vote for Lucille Ball. Well, the people on the voting committee.
This year, no one's going to be able to go to get their Emmy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, even if they're winning, they're just going to be like this. I thank the Academy.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So, but you've won quite a few awards. You've won a recipient of the People's Choice Awards, a Prism Award, 2 NAACP Image Awards, obviously, and for his work on television on Martin and the Hughleys, He has also been honored with the Emmy Award nomination for his work on the I Love Lucy special, the very first show, which we just talked about it. Once again, we are talking to actor, writer, producer Billy Van Zandt. You also have a very kind of famous brother as well, the Stevie Van Zandt. Yes, the one from the E Street Band and also from The Sopranos. So
Yeah.
a lot of talent coming out of the Central Jersey area, I got to say.
I'll tell you a horrible story of when I was on Jaws 2. The middle of the night one night, I get this pounding on my hotel room door, and I thought, I don't know, everybody's playing pranks on each other, so I just ignored it. And the next morning, I get into the van to go to the location at the hotel, and the second AD says, "Are you related to the rock star Van Zandt who died in a plane crash last night?" Well, my brother was on tour with Bruce in the E Street Band, and this is before cell phones.
Yeah, of course.
I flipped out. So I got off the van, I ran in, I called my parents to try and,
hey, what's up?
Hi, how are you? Have you heard from Steven? No, I haven't heard from him in a couple of days. Why? Oh, no reason. Took me a couple of hours to find out that it was Leonard Skinner's band, which is horrible too, but it wasn't Steven. But that flipped me out. And then he came home from tour, I think 2 or 3 days later, and he walked into my parents' house and he saw all his funeral arrangements sitting there. People had sent flowers, and he looked at one of them and went, "That's all they thought of me."
I'm worth more than daisies.
Exactly.
So you and your partner Jane, worked on almost everything you've done, which comes to the 25 plays and the dozen or so TV shows. How is the writing process for you? Do you prefer having a partner? I mean, obviously she was an incredible partner to work with, but do you find yourself more prolific when you work alone?
I've done both. I wrote alone before we started writing together, and I did a couple of things while we were together alone. I preferred writing with her. Although I would have, if you asked me that while we were working together, I would have been complaining the entire time. But she dealt with the studio and the network, and I never had to deal with any of that stuff. I hate doing that. And she would reel me in. I think what happens when you work with a partner, you have certain strengths and weaknesses, and the other person fills those weaknesses. So I never develop those weaknesses, And so if there was a dramatic love scene or something, she'd write that. I'd write the broad physical stuff, the crazy stuff. And it was a nice balance. Going forward, it's going to be very interesting. I'm not quite there yet. I'm still processing all of this.
Right.
But I like writing with her as a partner. I don't think I would like writing with another partner. And I did this book by myself. I had journals that I kept on all the TV shows we worked on. So when I started doing it, I went back and went through all the journals, and I remembered, this story and that story.
Oh, yeah. These stories are incredible. And once again, we're talking to writer, actor, producer Billy Van Zandt. The book is Get in the Car, Jane, Adventures in the TV Wasteland. It's really a great read. It doesn't get into any of the minutia, the politics of backlot type of backstabbing or anything like. It's just stories that if we had a very long dinner with you and a couple of things, you'd be regaling us with, and it's very well written. And the fact that the chapters are in a nice, concise manner, that you go from story to story going like, wow. And because there's so many projects you've worked on, it's great. It's a really, really great read. And one of the stories I enjoyed, you got to work with Andrew Dice Clay and Kathy Moriarty for the TV show
Bless This House.
Bless This House. I remember watching it in the blink that it was on the air.
Yeah.
But I thought it was the chemistry between the two of them was really good. Now here you are again working with an incredibly established, stand-up comedian who sold out Madison Square Garden 3 or 4 or 6 times, whatever it is he's done, and has that big bravado kind of personality. How was it working with those two?
I actually loved both of them. You would have thought they were a married couple in real life. They had some history. I don't know if they ever dated or not, but they knew each other for years. and there was a shorthand with them. I loved her. I really loved her. He was a handful. Um, he was fun, but
Shocker.
he was a handful. Yeah, he. It took me a while to figure this out. Every third, we'd start the table read would be on Monday. We'd shoot the show on Friday, and by Thursday it was camera blocking day, so all the actors had to know their lines. And on Thursday there would always be some problem on the set. You know, we get a phone call. Andrew keeps talking in a Spanish accent. We can't get him to stop. All right, I'll come down. And so everybody would slow down, and we'd deal with that. And then he'd say, we get another phone call. He keeps pretending there's flies buzzing around his head. I'll come down and take care of that. And this went on every Thursday. And it took me a long time to realize this was the day he was supposed to know his lines. And he was simply just making things up to stall. So we had Elaine Stritch on the show, which was fantastic. And she, Broadway legend, you know, and she's also legendary as a pain in the ass. So she played Kathy's mother on the show. And she came and she was rough, man. She showed up, and the driver, the PA who picked her up at her hotel said, "Good morning, Miss Stritch." "There'll be none of that." It's like, okay. She gets to the studio, and "Why is there a couch in my dressing room? You think I'm here to entertain people? Get this." So they took the couch out. And then at the table read, everybody says, you know, "Ladies and gentlemen, Elaine Stritch." And she said, "Oh, thank you." And she said, "Oh, do you want me to read the lines I rewrote in my hotel room last night, or should I just read this shit?"
Ooh, wow.
And Bruce Helford was the creator of the show, and he stood up and went, "Please just read our shit." So on that Thursday, I go down to the set because Elaine was having a problem with a line and she couldn't figure out how to play it. And so I get down there and I look over and I see Andrew sitting there. I said, "Hey, come here. You've been so good all week long. You've been so professional. You show up on time. You know all your lines. What's the deal?" And he points at Elaine Stritch and says, "There's only room for one."
That's smart. That's smart. Now, speaking of only room for one, you got to work with Don Rickles and Richard Lewis as well. I mean, this is the second time you're working with Richard, but was that the first time you were working with Don?
No, when we were on Newhart, the second script we wrote was with Don Rickles as a guest star.
Oh, okay.
And back then, show business was different. They flew Jane and me to Las Vegas, put us up in a hotel so we could see Don's act. Everybody knew his act, but they don't pay for anything now. But so we wrote that, and then Richard Lewis had come to us and asked us to write this show. And the only stipulation was Don was going to play the father. And it was like, well, this is fantastic. Right. Don was the nicest guy I ever worked with, and I loved working with him. Did
he give you a nickname?
No, he never. The only time he ever insulted me was, he'd always make fun of my wife at the time, for the movies that she made, and he'd make fun of Jane. But the only thing he ever said to me was, once I walked away from him on the set, and he said, "There he goes, ladies and gentlemen, the man who got us number 62 in the ratings." And it's like, "Oh, okay." But people would flock to our soundstage to watch our rehearsals. Normally, you rehearse in an empty soundstage, right. But it was packed because people wanted to be insulted by him. And we had the good sense while we were shooting the show to never turn the camera off. So even though the director would yell "cut," we told the cameraman to keep filming, because he would immediately start attacking the audience, the cameraman. He didn't care. And we ended up shortening the show shorter and shorter and shorter, and using the outtakes at the end of the show because they were just so funny.
No, he was brilliant. You felt loved when he insulted you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Or slighted if he didn't even like you, or slighted if he never even talked to you. That's like, what's wrong with me? I have thinning hair. Make fun of my thinning hair. Something. Now you've you've said, you've written over 25 plays with your partner, Jane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in full disclosure, I was a part of one of them. You Got Hate Mail, which ran quite a few years in New York City. I did the production that was at the Triad Theater. And then just recently, we asked your permission to do a Zoom version of the play, which
Yeah,
kind of worked perfectly.
yeah,
You had punched up the script a little to fit it into this type of format, and I think it worked brilliantly, if not seamlessly.
yeah. And I'm glad I finally got to see you do it because you played my role in New York, and the show was set up with laptop computers, 5 actors, 5 laptop computers, and so we used to have guest stars all the time. You could read the script right off the thing.
Right.
So Brian was nice enough to do my role. You did a couple times, I think, up there,
Yeah,
didn't
I
you?
did. I
Yeah,
think including the Zoom, it would be like the third time.
yeah, yeah. And I only had trouble with that show once. The very first time we did it, I didn't bother learning my lines because I didn't need to. The script was in front of me. And the very first time we did it, it was on a very big stage, and all the actors were separated on these different platforms. And I gave I think I had the first couple lines in the show, and then there was another scene without me. So I did the first couple lines, and then as the next scene started that I wasn't in, my computer started to do a virus scan,
Oh no.
and my script disappeared, and I had like a page and a half to suddenly turn the computer off, turn it back on, reboot, get the thing, find the script. I That was rough, man. That was
Oh no.
that
I
was
remember.
rough.
I remember bringing up that point when we did the off-Broadway one at the Triad Theater in Manhattan, where I said, like, we're gonna totally trust that this computer is not
Yeah.
gonna shut down on its own. I said, I'm gonna have a paper copy like under the laptop just in case,
I,
because just like a television news person, they read mostly off the teleprompter, but that's what those papers are in front of them
that's
is
right.
the prompter goes down. So
As we
good for
did
you.
that show, I had the script on my phone, and I keep the phone in my pocket ready to go if anything ever happened. And we were also close enough to the people. Yeah, that's how we were set up. And we were also close enough to the person next to you where if your computer went down, you could cheat a little bit by looking to your left. But yeah.
For those who didn't who don't know, it's a play about a gentleman who's having like a midlife crisis. He's having an affair with a secretary on another floor, and it's all through emails. The
Hmm.
interactions is through emails and live chat, texting chats and texting on a phone. And the wife that he's cheating on, she thinks her husband is a brilliant man, but then her good friend finds out about the cheating because the husband mislabels an email that goes to both the mistress and to the wife at the same time,
Yeah,
and the hilarity ensues.
it did ensue, didn't it? Yeah, that was based on Jane's first divorce, actually.
There you go.
Uh, and I remember at the time, she and the ex-husband were going back and forth at each other, and she was brutal to him, and but it made me laugh because I'm in the office reading these things over her shoulder, and I said, "Hang on to those, we might use those someday." And about 5 years later, we were writing the show, and we went, "Let's use them now." And some of the things that were actually in the script were things she had actually said, and things he had actually said to her, and things that she was crying about 5 years earlier. She was getting huge laughs with during our show.
It's
Yeah,
worked. I mean, the feedback that we got back from the most recent Zoom production that we did, it's done well. It just was hilarious. People were really putting into the comments how much they loved it. And then, of course, because of our agreement with you, we only had it up on our Facebook page, the Home Quarantine Cabaret. For those who want to join the group, we're trying to do at least one production a month, and I think we're going to be doing a series of short plays one night in the next month or so. So we're working on that.
that's
Um,
good.
you also did a play called Drop Dead. Is this what this one is?
That's Drop Dead. That's the LA production of Drop Dead. We did it in New York. That was the first show I produced in New York. And I was so naive at the time. I raised enough money to do 6 weeks of an off Broadway show. We did 6 weeks of an off Broadway show to sold out houses. We closed the door and I turned all the investors' money back to them, not realizing I could have kept going. We could still be running for all I know. But anyway, I did it out in
The
LA.
Fantastics.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
You could have been like the Fantastics.
Yeah, that's right. And so out in LA, we had a pretty good cast. We had some of the people from New York. We had Rosemary from the Dick Van Dyke Show, Adrienne Barbeau, who I met and eventually married, and Barney Martin, who everybody knew from as Seinfeld's father, and Donnie Most from Happy Days, and Craig Bierko, who's a big Broadway star, and who else is in there? Michael Kostroff, another brilliant actor in the back, and then us New Yorkers, John Mack, Glenn Kelman, Jane, and me. And man, that was fun. That was fun to do.
You also then your most latest one here is well, it used to be called Menopause. You're now calling it Boomer Boys, right?
The Boomer Boys musical. It's these four guys, four friends, sort of like a Rat Pack, singing and dancing about the foibles of what it's like to be in the age we are and all the things that we go through physically and mentally and all that sort of thing. It's women's groups love this thing because they come and laugh at their husbands, Yeah.
Well,
We've been
once
doing that for 3 years or so.
Once we get back to normal, I mean, you have these plays are running all over the world. You said production in Germany and Poland had to be shut down because of the virus, and other places as well.
Oh yeah, we've been very lucky. Especially You've Got Hate Mail is done everywhere all over the world, and Love, Sex, and the IRS, which is our first. In fact, there's a Polish poster to Love, Sex, and the IRS. These shows are done all over the place, and when the pandemic hit, the whole world shut down, obviously. But now, thank God, Europe seems to have things slightly, more under control, and now at least the plays over there are starting to come back to life.
Well, hopefully we can get a control over here and get your stuff back as well, because you're a hilarious writer, a hilarious, prolific writer. How do you think sitcoms, the future of sitcoms today are? Because it's, the traditional kind of 80s, 90s type of in the early 2000s sitcoms is kind of not that style of sitcom anymore. And anything that is similar to that style is like going to HBO, like a Veep or a Curb Your Enthusiasm type of route. I mean, I was a big fan of Big Bang Theory and a few other shows, but the new crop of so-called sitcoms that are out now, I personally am not finding like, oh my God, they're that great.
I don't really watch comedies because I do it for a living, so I sit there and pick them apart when I do watch them.
Right.
Schitt's Creek, I think, is fantastic.
Well, there you go, right.
Veep, also fantastic. Those kind of shows I love. It took me a couple episodes to get into Fleabag. I hated it when it first started because I thought it was just crude. And then after the third episode or so, I thought, no, I like these characters. I think.
What do you think about the freedom that they have by not having to worry about being on a network?
Oh, that's key. That's key, because what ends up happening, and here's where the sitcoms got into trouble. Not that I've been doing it for 100 years, but when I started, you were hired as a creative person, and then you were left alone, except for a censor who would say, "We don't want you to say damn." I was like, okay, but no one told you. Now you get for the networks I'm talking about. You get network people who are going, "I think you can do a better joke on page 27." It's like, oh really? But I think with these one camera shows, you have a freedom that you don't have with sitcoms because you're already shooting it. In a sitcom, you can get notes every day of the week, and then you got to rewrite. When you're doing a 1 hour drama or you're doing a one camera comedy, if they have a note, it's going to cost a lot of money to reshoot and stuff. So if they don't give you the note, and nobody needed it.
What would your advice be to someone who wants to break into the writing game in LA? Situational comedy type of style of writing, if at all.
The way most people are getting into it, you have to have a spec script. You have to that's a script you write for free on spec. You pick a show that you like, and you write the best script you ever wrote in your life, and you don't get a second chance on this. You have to write the best script. So take your time with it. It's got to be fantastic.
Would you suggest workshopping it with different people?
Yeah, absolutely. If you can do it live, and I've always listened to people's notes. I don't always take them, but I think people who don't at least listen are making a mistake. The way most people are getting in for writing, you become a writer's assistant. You're the person in the room. You're not helping write the scripts. You're typing them up.
Right.
and you can hear what works, what doesn't work, and why, and all that sort of thing. It's really a school in itself. Um, but I think the one of the best ways now, because people have cell phones and you can just make your own stuff, do webisodes. There are a lot of shows being done from webisodes, and they don't cost anything to make. I
Yeah,
would give people on that.
I have plenty of friends who have done that, who've decided to write their own material because they're not getting into the auditions they want to get into, or
Right,
they're not seen as the characters that they want to play. So
right.
the technology to make film something via camera, via sound, and stuff like that is, the prosumer version of phones, and even cameras are really cheap now to produce something
Yeah,
with a high quality. Things like Fleabag and other things that there's other shows that are out there that they make their way onto YouTube, and then eventually someone from a network or from one of the cable channels take a look and like, hey, we should develop this,
that's right.
and then yeah, and so if you have the ability and you have friends who have the technology to help you out, shoot your own stuff, and it's all about the writing when it comes down to it. You could have
Yeah,
all the great cameras and the best sound you can have, but if you don't have a great script because you didn't take the time to workshop it properly, that's what it's all about.
yeah, and even Fleabag that you mentioned, that was a stage show. That was a one-person stage show, and that's another way to go, right? Put it on stage. Um, what's it called? Kim's Convenience, a Canadian show, still running. It's very funny. That was a play. There are a lot of avenues. I mean, there are more avenues now than there were when I started, and I think people should take advantage of
And if you do take advantage of it, you too could have your own book like this.
it.
Get in the car, Jane. Adventures in a TV Wasteland. We're talking to writer, actor, producer, showrunner, Mr. Billy Van Zandt. So, Billy, this is the part of the show where I do a speed round where
Okay.
we come at you with some questions.
All right.
So they're just pretty A or B choices, yes or no. Once you hear the choices, let me bring up some music here.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Should I be nervous or no? Okay, go ahead.
No, I think you told me to keep your criminal record out of it, so I did. Here we
Okay.
go. Stage plays or sitcoms?
Stage plays.
New York or LA?
New York.
Long flight or long drive?
Drive.
Acting or writing?
Whichever one I'm not doing.
Mask or no mask?
Mask all the way, baby.
There you go. Highway or side street?
Side street.
There you go. That's spoken like a true Los Angeles resident. Comedy or drama?
Only comedy, man.
Booth or table?
Booth in the back, in the dark.
You said booth, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Roseanne or the Connors?
Well, this is I'll say the Connors because my friends were running it.
All right. Comfortable or uncomfortable?
Always comfortable.
Tony or Emmy?
Tony.
Buying or selling?
Buying.
Show running or show watching?
Show running. I love doing it.
Love or money?
Love.
Classic movie or new blockbuster?
Classic.
Rickles or Lucille Ball?
Don't do that to me. I'll have to pick Lucy.
There you go. Brooke Shields or Kathy Griffin?
Brooke. Love her.
Physical comedy or funny line?
Physical.
Favorite curse word? I know. See, you're tough. You write for TV, so it's tough to get a curse word out of you.
You know what I always say? Your mother's ass. That's what I say.
There you go. Your mother's ass. Sounds like someone from Middletown. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And finally, this is called the O'HalloRANT. I like to rant. What is your biggest pet peeve?
Well, I'm not going to go political here, so let me say pet peeve would be people who are inconsiderate. Let's just put it that way.
People who are inconsiderate, and that is the speed round here at the OHalloRANT with famed producer, writer, actor Billy Van.
Thank you.
Well done, sir. I'd like to thank you for being a part of the OHalloRANT this evening. For those who are looking to find your work, you can see this crawl at the bottom there saying vanzantmillmore.com. They're in Studio City, Los Angeles, but you can get them on the web. Check out the plays. The plays are done throughout the whole entire world. If you're looking to produce one of his plays, they're awesome. You have the 25 to choose from, and I'm sure he's writing more as the years are going on. Please check them out. They're really funny, especially the You Got Hate Mail, which you now could probably do through Zoom again, but who knows? Try it out. Billy, how can we find you on Twitter and Facebook?
I haven't the slightest idea. I'm on there, but I don't even know what they are. I don't know. Go to my website. It'll probably be on there.
There you go. For more information, check out the comments below. That's where I have all the descriptions of all his website and the websites to contact all of us. I want to thank again my good friend and guest, Mr. Billy Van Zandt. Billy, thank you so much for being a part of the show. We'll definitely have you back on in the near future. Hopefully we can get together in person in the near future.
I would love it. Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, and give my best to your family.
I will. Thanks.
Well, folks, I could have gone hours. Again, the book, Get in the Car, Jane, on sale now on Amazon. I have the link below in the comments. Check it out. It's worth the read. You can get the Kindle version of it. More and more stories about his days with him and Jane writing for such hit shows as the Hugleys and Martin and Suddenly Susan and Newhart and Yes Dear and the Wayans Brothers, and the list goes on and on and on. He's a really tremendously great guy, a Jersey guy, sweetheart of a man, but also incredibly funny too. So I can't wait to work with him again on something new, especially. And before I go, I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this and your comments. Let me see how up here. What do we got here? Rebecca. Oh, Rebecca was watching. Good to see you, Rebecca Zaccanino. Love you too. Boots, thank you for joining us. Libby, thank you for joining us. Chris, thank you again for joining us. Ricky G, hey, I know that name. Ask about, what does this one say? Ask about the future of 3 cameras and a live audience. Well, we kind of touched on that. It'll be interesting to see where we are with a live audience. That is right. Actually, you know what? I am going to bring him right back on. Hang on.
Well,
Billy.
hello. I'm glad I didn't get up.
Just because Rick's a good friend of mine. He teaches film editing up in San Francisco. He's asking about the future of the 3 camera and live audience sitcom.
I don't think you'll have an audience, but I think the format will stay the same because it's cheaper to make. I know Tyler Perry down in. Say it again.
Canned laughter.
Oh, I guess there would be. Yeah. Well, maybe they just don't put it on at all, which is even better. But I know Tyler Perry is having people at his studio. He's quarantining people with their entire families, and shooting the shows that way. But right now, I know that the Connors are back, and they're not. The writers are not allowed on the studio lot. They're doing Zoom writing rooms from home. I guess it's gonna be a long time because they're gonna have to take people's temperature when you get to the studio, and then you're adding 3 hours to everybody's workday just to make sure.
Scott Schiaffo, a co-star of mine from Clark, says, "You met his ass, a little pretty Jersey."
Yeah.
Let's see what's here.
Yeah.
But, ask about the future of 3 camera. We did that one. That was a quarantine cabaret, mostly right. Who worked in law firm recognized those characters. Anybody who worked at a law firm definitely recognized the characters.
Oh, yeah.
The guys from Haven for Heroes, the comic book shop in Port Jervis, New York, say it was very funny and played well in Zoom. That was referring back again to getting back to You Got Hate Mail. Here's the comment about Kathy. Kathy Moriarty is a character. I met her in the late 1980s when she was working on Soap Dish.
That's a funny movie. That's good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Very funny movie. There we go. What else? Boots also said, "Oh, Jersey ex-husband was with Westfield and was a huge Springsteen fan. Loved The Sopranos. He always yelled at the TVs at the Parkway. 135 on the Parkway." So that was it for the questions. Oh, what does Ricky G say? Oh, nothing on this one. Always had a blast and live. Great show, Brian. Thank you, Chris. Well, there we go. That's the question and answer portion done. Thank you again for coming back. I just thought that was I thought you were still in the green room, so I thought let me bring you back to answer the format. And yeah, it's going to be weird for a while until we get taken care of. But, you know, we all want to get back to work. That's for sure. I definitely want to get back on the road, and I know you want to get back to the lots and the sets and stuff like that. And it'll be interesting to see how the writing changes from here, in a sense, like quarantine, if the quarantine jokes are going to come, or if someone's going to write something about it like that. So you guys thought the show was ending. We brought you back for some bonus time. But once again, give a big round of applause to our guest, Billy Van Zandt, author of Get in the Car, Jane, Adventures, TV Wasteland. Once again, he came back for an encore, as we would say in the theater world.
Yeah.
Take your bow, Billy. You deserve it. We'll see him again, hopefully really soon. And thanks again for being part of the show.
Okay. Take care.
Well, there you go. So we are going to end this now. Can't keep going on, which I really do want to go on for a while, but I can't right now. So we'll see where we're at. For those who are interested, our next week's show, we're trying to confirm who our guest is. We haven't confirmed it yet, so I'm not going to announce anything as of yet. So just keep in touch on our Facebook and on our Instagram and Twitter page, at the O'HalloRANT on Twitter and at the O'HalloRANT on Instagram, also on Facebook and obviously on the YouTube channel as well. If you want to reach out to me through Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, to me, Brian C. O'HalloRANT on Twitter, Brian C. O'HalloRANT on Instagram, and the Brian C. O'HalloRANT on Facebook. Once again, a big thank you to Billy Van Zandt. The book is Get in the Car, Jane, Adventures in the TV Wasteland, available on Amazon. The link is posted below into the description. And once again, we are dedicating this show to Jane Milmore, who passed in 2020, earlier this year. And she will be terribly, terribly missed. A comedic genius in her own right. Well, thank you guys. Stay safe this weekend. Please wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Put a mask on, for God's sakes. Put a mask on. For the parents who are having to send their kids to children, please make sure they have masks as well. The teachers who are teaching them, some of them might be in compromised states themselves unknowingly. This is an important issue. I want to get it back to work. I want to get back on the road. I want to get about and shoot productions. I want to be out there at Comic-Cons. I want to be out there doing my stand-up. Trust me. And the way we do this is all together. It's not an infiltration of your rights. It's not. We're not taking anything from you. We're just saying, put a piece of fabric on. That's all. It's like telling you to put a seatbelt on. It's a law because you'll fly through a windshield if you crash your car. It's the same thing. Your breath will spit out droplets that may infect people. So just do it. It's simple. If we got this done in 6 weeks, some studies said if we just all of us wore 6 weeks straight, we could really squash the curve on this one. My thoughts and prayers to those who have suffered, who are suffering currently. A big shout out to our first responders who are taking care of all these people, because they're the ones putting their lives at risk to keep our family alive. And everybody who supports them, from truck drivers, taxi drivers, the people of the public transit, people of the TSA, airlines, all that. We're all trying to do this together. Look, if New Zealand can get down to zero cases by just locking it down, yes, it's a tiny island with a much smaller population, but they got it done. You just got to get it done, people. That's all. I don't want to get on anymore. Thank you so much. You've been watching the O'HalloRANT. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.